The response of the Human Rights Council with the situation in Ukraine was very robust. I think a lot of us have taken notice of that and appreciate that. There are other country situations that might prove more challenging. Mm-hmm. One example is a recent vote concerning Xinjiang province in China. Mm-hmm. So despite clear findings from the UN Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights about possible crimes against humanity in Xinjiang, and reports from major human rights organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch corroborating this, the HRC rejected a draft decision to hold a debate on the issue, just a debate on the issue earlier this month. In your view, are there any reforms to the Human Rights Council and its processes that you think could address an impasse like this, and which would prevent certain states, such as China, from avoiding scrutiny and accountability?
Well, definitely we have several factors and several elements that we can develop to overcome this impasse, as you say. First of all, we have to be consistent with what we decided. This is a universal system. By definition, a universal system has to address the human rights situation of every single country in the world. There's no country in the world that can be out of the scrutiny of the universal system. It will be incoherent and inconsistent. And if we are talking about China, which is a member of the Council, which gives you a higher responsibility as being a member of the Council, you're talking about 1/5 of humanity. It's 1.5 billion people. So by definition, first of all, there's no way that a system would not have a scrutiny on the violations of human rights of China or in any other country. Second, we need to build the confidence for the system to work. And this the report of the Office of the High Commissioner on the situation in Xinjiang is a game changer in a way. Why? From the institutional point of view, the issue of Xinjiang has been in the Council addressed since 2017 in different formats. It was addressed by joint statements of states, by NGOs, by special rapporteurs. But of course, this report is not a report of the foreign ministry of one country. This is a report of the main institution created by the United Nations in 1993 to oversight the human rights of all over the world. So the argument of China, and this I'm not saying anything special, I'm publicly has discussed this with ambassadors on the record. The issue of that office having no mandate from the Council to have an assessment is relative, because the competence of the office when it was created in 1993 says clearly in the resolution in Vienna to oversight and address human rights situation all over the world. So the report is there, and at one point countries might find a way to address this report. How? This is a multilateral democratic body, driven by states with majorities. Of course, I would love every resolution to be approved by consensus. We approve around 40 resolutions in each session, so this year we are around 120 important resolutions on human rights. Between 60 and 70% are approved by consensus, and that's always the ideal. It's a social contract of the whole Council. But sometimes we don't have consensus, and the same way that there was no consensus or enough votes to decide to have a specific issue in the program of next year to address this report, that by the dynamics and dialogue of the Council, even the new membership of the Council, that can perfectly change in the future or not. It will depend on the multilateral drive of the states. Because that same session was able to approve a special rapporteur on the human rights situation of the Russian Federation, for example. The same membership. In another situation, had another approach. But by definition, All countries have to fulfill their obligations. In the case of China, I don't see any way of the Human Rights Council not addressing the human rights situation of China at one point, because that's the task of the Council, and it addresses many countries around the world, and China will not be an exception. How and how far the human rights situation of China goes through this Xinjiang report, it will be with dialogue, cooperation, and the impasse could be addressed, engaging to prove that a report of the Office of the High Commissioner needs to be addressed by the Council at one moment. The way to get to that point, it will go back to the basis of multilateral dialogue and cooperation and constructive engagement with people that maybe don't think the same that we do, but that's part of being president of the Council, to administer the differences, but go always, in the Council we see every day the basic of any successful negotiation. To go from wishes to positions and arrive at the third stage, which is common interest. Each country, each of the 47 countries starts addressing a situation and can start with the stage of wishes. I wish that this could happen in this country. But that's not multilateral diplomacy. So we have to go to positions, try to convince others of our views. That's what happened in the negotiation of the resolution presented by the US, UK, and other countries. And if we don't convince the others of our arguments, the vote comes, and it's a democracy. We have to accept the result. But what we want to go is to the third stage, which is a common interest. So a system created by the international community to address human rights situation wants to assess and help the victims all over the world in every single country. And we have the Universal Periodic Review, which is an unprecedented tool created by the Council that never existed in the 50 years of the former Commission, which is a mechanism that every 3 or 4 years, every single country of the world has to put a human rights situation on the table and receive criticisms by NGOs, by other states, and follow recommendations. And of course, China is part of that cycle. Every single of the 193 countries, for the fourth time in this November, will start going through this cycle. So that is an indirect way also to assess the situation in Xinjiang and other parts of China, like any other country. And countries will have an opportunity to follow up on the report of the High Commission.
And I think that UPR process is coming up in 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. And
November 7th.
For those who aren't familiar, the Universal Periodic Review process does review the human rights record of every country. So that was, I think, a solve for the criticisms that sometimes these bodies are focusing on specific countries.